Welcome to Musicians Peer Support, everybody. Today we're welcoming Michelle Rose. Michelle, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I was really excited to talk to you because you have so many different communities and cultures that kind of intersect in your world, and I really wanted to dig into that. We'll get into that in a minute. First, I wanted to know, where did you grow up? Where are you from?
Oh, I'm actually from California. I'm in the Bay Area now, and but I grew up in San Jose. Lived up in Portland, Oregon for about 18 years, and so I'm back. Mostly California, a lot of Oregon that helped form me, and then back in California. So that's where I am.
Where did you discover, or when, kind of in what realm of your world when you were younger, did you discover that you were going to be in creative spaces? Like, how did you find yourself? Did you find a passion early?
I did. I mean, I grew up in creative spaces, so it just was a given. My father was a musician. My mom played music. They both also were draftsmen, engineering, civil, civil draftsmen. And but I think for me, it was kindergarten when I started drawing, and I got a lot of attention for my artistic skills. So I was always labeled the artist everywhere. So I've carried that feeling all the way through. So for me, creative things just were always there. It just was always happening, and that was my identity. So I didn't have a spark at a certain point in time, and I talked to a lot of other people who had that, but for me, I just grew up in the middle of it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What did you do after high school?
Oh boy, I got into a lot of trouble. I think through school, I really got into the music community, and I'm older than I look sometimes. And so I was a teenager in the 80s and very much into the punk, new wave, metal, alternative scene, which was a very creative scene. A lot of mixtapes, a lot of looking through record stores, and so I was studying. I was also doing fashion, like making my own clothes, which is where I ended up going later on. But after high school, I didn't really go right to college or have a direction. And so a lot of my friends were in bands, and I was, following a lot of bands around and making clothes and drawing, and not doing a heck of a lot until I moved to Portland.
But making your own clothes is a major
Yeah.
kind of little
Yeah.
precursor to your future career.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so back then, you designed your own clothes
Mhm.
with like you drew them out and stuff. Did you know exactly like how that you just kind of
Probably,
did it?
yeah. 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 There was a couple of different things. The 80s was a very label heavy time, right? For
Yeah,
everything. Everything was expensive, preppy looks, all types of things,
yeah.
which was not, our culture for the music. But my mom wouldn't buy me everything I wanted. And so I ended up going to the rebellious side of, all right, then I'm just going to make everything that I want. And we did a lot of shopping at vintage stores like the kids are doing now. And I would buy things, and then I would take them apart and learn how they were made, and I would totally reconstruct them. Then my first job was at a fabric store. So I was doing fabric retail, and I would work at night after high school, and I would pull up patterns, recut them up, and remake patterns. So instead of drawing them out, I would take patterns that I really liked and hybrid them together. Then I would cut them out at work and go home, sew them up at 9 o'clock at night, and wear them the next day to school.
Oh,
Pretty
wow.
much all the time. I had a wardrobe of almost all my own clothing at one point. So
Wow. I
yeah.
mean, that's next level. Like that's next level designing your own clothes when you're young like that. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
And friends asking you if you would do the same for them.
oh,
Oh, I
right.
love that skirt, and we were making things that weren't readily available. We were making leggings and mini skirts and wearing them with high boots and stuff in the mid 80s when that was not available.
Yeah.
Leggings were not a thing that people went out and bought at point in time. And
Hmm.
I had a whole closet full of them,
Wow.
handmade, and bleach them up, make patterns, do whatever you want. But it was a very creative time where people were cutting things apart and
Yeah.
stitching them up or safety pinning them, and that's part of that community.
Wow.
That
And so you were immersed in those cross cultures already of fashion and music and
absolutely.
from basically from day one.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's identity all the way. And at some point, if you don't find a direction and go after it, you know, you get a little lost. And that's, I think, what happened for me after school was, having to move out of my element and go to another city and figure it out on my own.
what made you decide to do that?
What's that?
What made you decide to do that?
Getting out of my house. I was dating somebody, and my parents actually had moved out of the Bay Area. They moved up north to Nevada City, and there were some reasons for that. My father had actually, as a musician, he would play a lot of gigs after, at night on the weekends. He actually got hit by a drunk driver when I was 10 and almost died. Yeah, one of those types of things that completely shifted his life. And that prompted him to buy land up north. We built a house up there, and he wanted to get out of the Bay Area. So that moved us up there. But what it also did was put me in an environment that didn't have a lot of opportunity. It was a small town. A lot of kids were being displaced from LA and the Bay Area. The high school was one high school, so it was 3,000 kids. But all of these kids from the Bay Area, from LA, that were displaced by people leaving the cities. It was such a thing in the 80s. There's actually a made-for-TV movie with Molly Ringwald as a punk rock teenager of families leaving LA to go up to Oregon and homestead. Like, it was a
Wow.
thing.
I
It was
mean,
a real
that's an iconic portrayal. Molly
thing.
Ringwald. I mean, how 80s can
Yeah.
you get?
Yeah. And this was before she was super famous, so she doesn't talk a
Wow.
lot about it.
Yeah.
And
That's a good
in
one to
fact,
look up, though.
I do have the name somewhere, and I'll have to find it because I didn't think I was going to talk about it. It's a really pretty terrible movie, but for
Yeah.
me, it was fun to watch it because I went, "Oh my God, that was my life. That's
Yeah.
what we did." And so there were a lot of parents doing that. And that prompted me to want to leave. And I had meaning I wanted to come back to a city. And my dad did not want to go back to the Bay Area. So he's like, well, if you go down there, I'm not going to come visit you. He just was really wanted to be in another element. So I followed a boyfriend up to Portland. I went up to visit him. I fell in love with the city. This was 1989, 1990. So I landed in Portland right at the beginning of the whole grunge era, the Riot Girl era, all the things that were happening there. So I got right into that scenario. And instead of being able to find a job in retail like I had been, I ended up finding a job at a fledgling coffee company that was just getting started called Starbucks. And it was super small. And it was only in Seattle, Vancouver, Chicago, and it just started in Portland. And I was part of the young group that were helping to open up all the new stores in Portland. So I got to work with Howard Schultz directly. I got to become
Wow.
a trainer really young, and I kind of got to get my life together, get my shit together, but still not have a direction. I landed in a company that was a really cool culture of a lot of artists and musicians. This was like one of the only places you could get a job if you were tattooed up and pierced up, besides a record store and a band. That was just not a thing that you could do as easily get work if you were in the counterculture of some sort. So Starbucks was a place that really provided a strong home for people like us. They paid us well. They gave us medical and dental insurance, amazing insurance, and a really strong community that I'm actually still part of. I'm part of the Starbucks alumni community as
Wow. Because
well.
I mean, that was a much different time.
Yeah, totally.
And that where it originated, and like you
Yeah.
really got in kind of on the ground up, basically.
Yeah, and that kept happening to me for a lot of things. Ground level for a lot of Gen X culture.
Mm.
And I'm squarely in that. So that's where I ended up there.
Yeah,
So
because I mean the grunge era, and all of that stuff. how did, well, and I wanted to ask you about the martial arts too,
Yeah.
but how did fashion then play in when you moved up there? Because, you know, coming, you were still designing your own clothes?
I was, but it was getting harder to because I didn't have a lot of free. I ended up just working a lot. And then because I wasn't really focused, I ended up getting in with kind of the wrong people again and doing a little too much partying. And I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere. So somehow I got myself cut off from that. And I was like, I want to train a martial art. I need to get healthy. I used to be very physical. I used to play sports when I was younger, and I'd given all that up, and I was just doing too much partying, basically. And I found a really good martial arts school in Portland that was run by both a man and a woman as business partners, and had a lot of men and women there. And there was a lot of women teaching women self-defense. So it was a place I felt safe. There was a lot of schools I tried to go into that felt like I couldn't even get in the door. It felt like a lot of big burly guys and the masculine culture, the ego. And this one felt really, really open and welcoming. And in fact, when I went in to visit, the first biggest, scariest looking guy in the class came out after class, and he just got really friendly. And he said, "Are you going to join? It's really fun. You should join." And it was like, okay, I think I should join. And that was the thing that helped me get my act together. And then I had to go through a whole process of, of shifting and growing up. And somewhere in there, I got to a point where I was like, I'm not going anywhere. I need to have a career. I need to go to school. I was living also in the martial arts community. I had a lot of people with college degrees around me, a lot of people in college. We were teaching courses at Reed and Lewis and Clark College in Portland. And my roommates all had, degrees, and they were working on master's degrees. And I was like, oh, I need to go to school. And so through another whole circuitous story, I got myself to school, and I put myself through apparel design school. And then I started studying business. And right around the same time, I got my black belt, which would be the later 90s. So it took me about 8 years to get my first degree black belt.
And what discipline, if you don't mind me asking?
It's a form of pencak silat, which is an Indonesian style called pukulan.
Nice,
And so it's very fluid, very dance-like. Music's a big part of it.
nice.
Drumming's part of it. So a lot like Brazilian capoeira, but much more
Wow.
traditional.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, yeah. And so all of that was coming together. And then getting my degrees was a big piece of it. And then as soon as I got my degree and then I was studying business, I got a paid internship. First, I got an unpaid internship at Adidas, because in Portland, you had Adidas, Nike, and a Columbia Sportswear, the trifecta of the major brands. And I didn't accept the Adidas one because I got a paid one at Columbia Sportswear. And that's where I met my mentor, who
Mm.
had come from Nike. And my career took off from there. And so
What
within,
was your position when you started at Columbia?
I was a design intern,
Wow.
like a 30-year-old intern, running
Yeah.
around cutting color chips for all the designers, asking questions, going,
Okay, wow.
because I was also a black belt. So I was a leader in a sense, but I also knew how to be a really good student.
Yeah.
I knew how to be really respectful.
Hmm.
So I was running around helping everybody, but I got promoted to assistant designer within 3 months, and I got promoted to designer within a year.
Wow.
And then from there, it took off pretty fast because I had a really strong foundation. The community piece was a big part of it because the martial arts community was strong. What I'd learned at Starbucks, from working directly with Howard Schultz, he built amazing community, and he transferred that to us trainers to help other people learn that. But also coming from the music community, that's something that has stayed with me, even though I kind of put that away.
Mm.
I actually had to walk away from the music community for a while to
Yeah.
get healthy because it was connected too much to
A
partying.
lot of people can relate to that in our community. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that has come back around full circle for me now more recently. And so, yeah, there's lots I could talk about that, but the community piece was what got me into then the fashion world. And then from there, after Columbia Sportswear, I grew so quickly there. In about 5.5 years, I got headhunted out by the North Face to come back to the Bay Area. They doubled my salary. I was leading the biggest category, which was actually incredibly daunting. And when I look back on it, I go, what the hell, why the hell did they have me do this? But Columbia Sportswear was so organized and so good of a company and so supportive. They had a lot of people learning from Nike. And so there was a lot of great structure. The North Face was in the Bay Area, and it was pretty much Lord of the Flies when I got there.
Mm,
It had been growing too fast that it didn't have a lot of structure in place. So that's why they hired me to come in
wow.
and organize the line and put some structure in place and
Wow.
really have a lot of creative control,
Yeah.
which was a joy, even though it was very difficult working there emotionally for a lot of the creatives. So
Hmm.
that's where what I do now with structure came out of, because I saw in these companies a lot of creatives. I saw a company that supported creatives, and I saw a company that didn't. And I knew from Starbucks how much we flourished with support. When you
Hmm.
support your people, when
Mhm.
you support your creative, and us as creatives, we're incredibly emotional.
Yeah.
We have a lot of mental health things that we're trying to balance, which makes us really good at what we do.
Right.
Um, and in corporate environments, man, you can get chewed up and spit out really fast.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really, thank you, Michelle, for sharing all of that about yourself. I have so many questions for you. We're going to talk about your structure society in a minute. And everybody, please go follow Michelle Rose and check out the links. We'll also post the links in the chat as well and support her in any way you can because our speaker is volunteer, obviously. Also, shout out to Todd Wolf in the room, who is our one of our founding, what I call board members. One of our founding leaders in this group. And so, shout out to you, Todd Wolf. Thank you so much for being here. Your Michelle, your values in the martial arts. So, my sister and my brother-in-law, they run a karate dojo in Chicago, Enso's studio. Enso
Yeah.
Karate, so shout out to Enso, which is Shotokan Karate.
Yep.
And I just have so much respect for what they do. They run a really amazing business, but they also built an amazing community. My
Yeah.
brother-in-law just celebrated a 50th birthday, and I got to see the community pour into him. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just so fantastic to see that, and I see that it can kind of save lives. And
Yeah.
I can see how community and people reaching out to people and people uplifting people, how powerful it really can be in these kind of small moments of
Yes.
our everyday. And
Yes.
so we're going to talk about that a little bit. But I wanted to ask you about what you said about being a leader versus being a learner and a student. And I thought that was so valuable that you were a little bit older than your typical intern. You had more experience,
Mm-hmm.
but you kind of humbled yourself, and it ended up paying off in the end. And I think in the music industry, in my just personal observation, in the corporate world, labels, whatever it is, even in the indies, there is that struggle.
Yeah.
And I think a similar attitude is helpful of this kind of like, sure, I might know this much, but I also don't know anything about this and this and this and this because there's so much to know about. Just
Totally.
having that balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you seen that also with the people that you work with in communities and music and stuff?
Absolutely, absolutely. And even more so now when everything, because I do a lot of looking at, talking about, and connecting with people on social media platforms, and everybody trying to grow their own independent identities and businesses. It's so performative. So now everyone can make themselves look a certain way and create something and rise to the top with not much behind it. Like my blog is called Hunting the Paper Tiger, which is the thing about the paper tiger, meaning it's all surface, no substance, right? And
Mm,
so there's a lot of that now where the people who have the substance often feel very uncomfortable with performing and putting it out there.
yep.
And so people don't see it and they can't get past the shiny object. I mean, this is something you see in music and film and acting. And all. I mean, anywhere where somebody becomes a celebrity and a star and people, they get attention, it creates money. It creates money for a lot of people. And so everybody attaches to it. And that has an icky feeling to it. And the same thing happens in both design and martial arts. I mean, in martial arts, the biggest, flashiest students who come in could get a lot of attention, but eventually they drop off They can't make it to black belt. They can't make it beyond because they can't get past what all the accolades they're getting out here. And so when all that disappears, who are you underneath? And that's like what comes through, because that's the thing about like seeing a painting from an amazing master has a light behind it that you can't see in a printed postcard of it, right? There's an energy behind what you do that is your own. Every single person has their own little fingerprint, their own light. But the problem is we get taught to cover it up. We get taught to make it something else, look like something else. Um, uh, Put on this outfit, become this identity. I think it's interesting where we have to try to be promoting ourselves, but humble at the same time. And that's a very fine line to exist in. And
Yeah.
for me, martial arts gave me a structure with which to keep coming back to
Yeah.
that place of humility and humbleness.
Mm.
And then also, in order to have power, you have to be able to give your power away. But we're always also saying, don't give up your power, don't give your power away. And at a certain point, you start to understand how to do that. But it works internally. You can't really learn it in a book
Yeah.
outside here. You can read about it, practice it, but you have to live it through experiences that are challenging.
Yeah.
You got to get, as my musician partner and composer likes to say, you got to get some dirt on you.
Yeah.
You have to get some scrapes and stuff.
Yeah, and that life experience and just kind of going through it, and but that's why I like the idea of the community being there, because like you're not alone in doing that.
Right,
You got
right.
people around you that can maybe understand a little bit. I have so many questions. Also, questions welcome, guys. Everybody in the room, thank you for being here. Mary Beth, nice to have you here as well. So questions welcome, but I wanted to dig into some things. So for example, like I hope you don't mind, I'm just gonna like ask you questions now from like the from I think maybe what could be helpful for our community, because
Yeah.
we're touching on a lot of different things that we talk about a lot in musicians peer support, like how do you stay true to yourself, like how do you present your brand or present like your product or your music or whatever it is you're trying to kind of like promote or
Yeah.
whatever, without making it seem so performative and like, oh, look at me, and like how do you kind of promote by still being genuinely yourself?
Yes.
So like that's just an ongoing dilemma. But then also another dilemma that I'm seeing lately is because I really like the idea in music of like developing one sound and like having your kind of your own
Mm-hmm.
sound, and
Yeah.
that's like you gain a lot of respect in the biz when you're like, oh, they have a sound. And I like that. I like artist development, but part of it is for artists, like they don't know what that is for themselves. They're trying to figure that out. So I
Right.
say, well, maybe like listen to all different kinds of music and get all the things and like see who you really are. But like, what advice would you give to somebody who's kind of like, I do music, like I know, it's like, but I don't know like what my brand is, and or like, how to
Yeah.
kind of like package myself visually, for example. Like I want to be true to myself, but I do want to put myself out there. Like what kind
Yeah.
of general words of advice, like where do we even start to kind of think about, how do we start to think about that?
We start with this bullseye. A thing that we do, there's a couple of different things in here. One is there's a graphic designer named Debbie Millman who's been around for a long time. If you look her up, she has an amazing podcast. But she has a thing where people would talk about brand, and she said, I don't really believe in having a personal brand, because as a branding expert, she says brand is what you take away, what you distill down, right? And she goes, I think people need to be their whole selves and put everything in. And I have to say that the thing that got me hired in the fashion industry, first off into a competitive industry, was the fact that I put my martial arts on my resume. That's what hooked my mentor to finding me. And I almost didn't do that because I was terrified. Like, should I tell people I do this? Those things that are special about you and unique, they might not get you a job, a certain kind of job, because you might not be a fit. Um, but they could really get you the job that's right for you because of that piece. So knowing yourself. So there's a thing that we do in my martial art, which is we focus on the bullseye, which is self, community, world. so that you focus on yourself. Because in martial arts, it's not about fighting people. It's about going internally and figuring out who you are. And you do that by, like, when you get on the floor and you're fighting with another opponent, you don't even really look at the opponent. You look at their center. But what you're doing is you're fighting a reflection of all your biggest fears. You're fighting yourself. And so you're learning about yourself while you're doing these things. And so going in, learning about who you are. So even things like, who do you love to listen to? What do you love to eat? What do you love to have around you? How is your background looking? How is your home? How do you, well, everything. I use the idea from our design world to create a collection of mood boards. And so I actually have done this with colleagues to help find, and musicians, to find their identity too, of creating a mood board of like, throw in everything you love and then start to move them around, and you'll see patterns in things. And then I'll start to help people pull out what are like the top 3 things. Like, I've done that for myself for years. And what I came to realizing was I had these fragmented parts of my life that needed to come together. And they came together in design, which is, visual design, art, music, any design, art, visuals, any of those. Design, music, martial arts, movement. And it turned out for me that my trifecta was really a visual, auditory, and kinetic, that I needed to have all these 3 things present in my life to feel whole. And it took me years to come up with that. But now I use that for people to, like, do these things, pile everything in, and see how all these things support till you get to your trifecta, your 3 things. And that is how you work on your identity. That's a beginning, very simple way of that self. How do you work on yourself? What are your values? What do you believe in? What's important to you? What will you be upset that you didn't focus on when you're on your deathbed? That's something I did to pick my job, was what will I be upset that I don't go after at the end of my life? And
Trying to find those passions.
that's a piercing through
Yeah.
kind of feeling and looking back. But so the self, and then how you put it out into the community, and then how you get your message out into the world. But the community piece I found was, how are you supported? What tools are you using? What are your inspirations and things? But also, that community layer is the gatekeeper. These are your gatekeepers. And in the music industry, it's the labels, producers, anybody in there that is the tool for you to get your art and your music and your creations out into the world. Because here's the artist in the center. Here's the world who wants to experience, you want them to experience what you're creating. That centerpiece here is your community, or your gatekeeping, that is keeping it from happening or making it happen, right? And so how are you interfacing with that? And I use that to actually talk about that with AI and creatives when we get to that piece, is how I visioned AI is that that thing to help you, or the whole idea of the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
So that little framework is one way to think about that. If you don't have that strong central identity, if you're trying to copy somebody else and do something else, you're existing in that community realm and trying to go out into the world with a hollow center.
Yeah,
So,
really helpful. Thank you. That's very valuable. And we are going to be talking about AI a little bit. We'll save that for a minute. We need a little bit of energy for that one. I know it's one of the rare times
yeah,
that we're actually going to talk about AI in MPS. But
yeah.
thank you for that, because that's really cool. It's like, what kind of methods can we do to find our identity? And so, as you all can see, Michelle's a really fascinating person. That, like, very helpful. That type of mindset is really helpful to a lot of the issues that I think our community, that arises in our community. Michelle, I have a question to kind of go a little bit more specific. I love what you said, and I think that's so helpful. Um, in our everyday, like, what do I want wear for my photo shoot? Like, how do I and it's like, when I'm working with my Patreon people or artist
Uh,
development artists
yeah,
and I'm helping them kind of find their look and stuff like that, like,
yeah,
I kind of am saying like, well, do you want to be wearing a hat, or even want to be seen on your album cover? So I'm kind of asking those types of questions, but
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and you're a fashion person, so do you have, design, fashion, all of that. Like, do you have any just kind of general words of advice? Do you see
Yeah.
something, maybe a pattern or a trend, or like, do you notice anything about independent artists? Like, what advice would you give in general for like their look, finding their visual look, like fashion wise for artists? Because sometimes that's not our strong point. We're throwing on like a t-shirt and jeans
Right.
and we're going to call it a day.
And that's why they have stylists who come in and do that. And then you have to kind of embody this thing that you're not really this thing. But we have to do it too as professional, like as designers, we had the same kind of thing. Like we would walk into these companies in pretty crazy things. And I remember one older designer, he said to me, well, we all like you can see all the business people, they're wearing their certain kind of look that they need to look, but we're expected to walk in and look weird. We're
Right.
expected to kind of have that kind of thing. So people
Okay.
would play that up a bit.
Yeah.
And it allowed people to go into their identity more.
Yeah.
So with music, because my partner is, he plays in a lot of underground metal bands in Oakland, out of Oakland, but across, internationally they play, and they have an identity. He has a very different identity for both,
Right.
but it still has to be him.
Yeah.
So there's another piece that I always pull from, which was a Coco Chanel quote of, you know, what it's even in the movie Working Girl, dress beautifully, they notice, or, dress beautifully, they notice the dress impeccably, they notice the woman. Meaning, if I would, and Coco Chanel would talk about it too, like you've got to dress in a way that the clothing kind of disappears and people see the person.
Mm.
And so if you put on something crazy and if you're not inhabiting it and people go, wow, that's an amazing suit, that's an amazing dress. Well, they're
Yeah.
noticing your clothing. If they look at you and they say, you look amazing,
Yeah.
they're noticing you. And in order to really come out and be you, which is different than say like a model putting on something and trying to show off the clothes. A model is trying to be a mannequin. A person needs to be the person that they are and dress the way they need to dress. And so there's a comfort level. You have to have a certain level of comfort. If you're kind of constantly feeling like this isn't me,
Yeah.
there's plenty of things I cannot wear. In
Because it like
fact,
it has to feel it, like they're gonna see it if you don't feel like you're being genuine in your outfit, like it
yes,
reflects. Yeah.
yeah, it absolutely does. And so, and as artists, musicians, you have leeway to wear whatever you want, really. You really do.
Yeah.
But there's also an expectation of, well, yeah, stand out. How can you stand out?
Hmm.
And if you want to stand out, you've got to go further into yourself, And so I look at people like there's an author named Seth Godin, and he's from the tech world, but he talks about all this amazing, just philosophy and life culture stuff that is amazing. He's bald, and he always just he sits in front of a bunch of books, but he always wears brightly colored glasses, and they're always like bright yellow or purple, or that's his identity. He's
Yeah.
picked a thing that he shows up in that he loves, that makes him feel like him, and becomes his trademark.
Yeah.
Just
And
comes from the
and
center.
Michelle, how do you feel about, because I say this to people, is like for just I use it as an example, like if I used to play with Earth Rising, my husband and I together, I would just like wear something like this, black pants, black boots. But for
Yeah.
photos, for the Instagram and all that, it's all pretty and I'm wearing dresses, but that's not what I would wear on stage. So like it's like, like
Yeah.
that's just I'm still being true to myself. Like that's also an idea. I'm not being disingenuous putting on the pretty dresses for the photos, but it doesn't have to be one thing, I guess is what I'm saying. Do you agree with that?
No, you don't have to look the same. I mean, that's also part of your thing.
Right.
So then you decide, you're like, well, on stage, this is what I wear when I perform. When I take the photos, this is when I get to put on a dress because I want to put on a dress and I want to look like this. It's about owning it. making a decision and just owning the hell out of it, right? You know, and I think they just said that. Oh, one of the teachers said that for my son at his graduation. He took a Beyonce quote. I don't remember the first two pieces of the quote, but the last line was grind until you own it, and that was that own it piece of like, just keep doing what you believe in. And no matter when people say, you should really blah, 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 you should really blah, blah, you should look exactly like you do on stage in the photos. Like, well, no, because in the photos, you're trying to do a different thing. And on stage, you're trying to physically perform and you've got to be in your body in a different way. And marketing is marketing. It has to look a certain way. So even if you, like me, if I just kind of show up and look like this, like I can do this in a corporate photo. I have a corporate photo that actually looks very similar to this. But for other types of things, I hate posed photos, or I'm not in a band, so I don't have to do band photos. But a lot of the bands, it's like you look at them, metal bands, and they've got to perform and they've got to put on studs and sometimes makeup and all kinds of things. But they do that when they want to, right? If they want to perform that. And so there's a thing you're trying to portray to get people to come in and have an experience with you. So you might think about something like the dress and go, why do I want the dress in the photo to draw people into an experience with me? What does that do? What does that make people feel? Because there's an element of community in this, of where there's a safety element. Like, is it interesting? Is it drawing me in? And then they go and they get to have an experience with you. And so a lot of times, if you're very theatrical, you might expect a big theatrical photo. I mean, a performance too. So there's a whole transition of what am I wanting my people to experience? But it's also like, what's comfortable for me first? I always say, like, I'm my first customer. My first customer is me. And then my guest for podcasts or any of my audience, like those are my next customer. And then the people outside, like, that are just watching, they're whatever, like I care about the interaction. So if, for musical types of things, it's me and how I feel about what I'm creating, doing. I do play guitar and sing. I'm not going to go and play a song I don't feel passionate about. I'm never going to be able to play that and sing it and do anything that I feel good about if it's not something I love. But then I'm interacting with one person, right? You pick your people in your audience one at a time. It's the same type of thing, with what you're doing here. It's like you're talking to each person. And that's the most important thing. What experience do you want them to have? What experience do you want you to have? So that starts the center, that self to community. And then that's the energy that then gets kind of transmitted out into the world. And that's where the marketing comes in, is like, okay, what am I showing the world to draw them into this?
Right. You're still staying true to that self, and
Yeah.
that direct line to communicating and expressing to the world is still true to yourself.
Yeah. So there's no answers. I think it's an interesting question, to
Yeah,
ask
and
everyone.
yeah, this one right here. You're talking about the one in the chat right here.
Oh, no, I
Oh,
mean,
okay. It's similar. It's similar. Is it more about trying on different personalities in seeking your authentic self, which can change depending on circumstances, mood, etc.? That's from Todd Wolf.
absolutely, absolutely. And that is also why, I mean, you see a lot of artists, who go down one road and then they change, even if they get, I think I don't know, somebody was talking about Pearl Jam and how they wanted to do things and how they stayed away from, going through the whole machine.
Yes, they have survived many different phases
Yeah.
in multiple ways.
And their fans are so loyal. I just interviewed another musician, Kelly Pratt, for my podcast, and he plays with more like he's played with David Byrne and St. Vincent and stuff, and he's a side guy. He's a horns and composer and arranger. But he was also saying, like, when he talked about the metal scene, he said there's something about that where in music people will like the flavor of the month, or they'll move on, or they'll change up a lot. He said, but there's something about that metal scene where people are so loyal no matter what, they follow people forever. And so Pearl Jam was an example of that sort of thing. But that means also like the artist needs to be able to do what they want to do and go explore. And as a fan, you have to, or as another fellow artist, respect that and let them do that. But also, if for me, it's like in figuring out where I'm going now, because I don't design anymore, but I pulled music back into it. Now I'm leading communities and I'm pulling my martial arts into it. And people are like, whoa, martial arts, what does that have to do with any of it? You have to play. And I decided a long time ago, a few years ago, not that long ago, to what I call fail in public. I needed I needed to stop hiding. So for some of us, we have to do it in private. I needed to get it out there and try personas out there. And I think until I started to find my groove, because I needed some feedback and I needed to develop a tough skin around the feedback. And I was really interested in looking at David Bowie's origin story too, because he did the same thing before he got attention. He used to perform in dresses and play acoustic music, and he was trying to find his place. And you have to go through those steps to get to the next place. You have to do it. And so you have to find that way to build safety and care around yourself and supportiveness to help you go through those pieces, but also voices that will speak honestly to you, that you trust as you do it, that you can rebel against if you,
Yeah, these safe spaces, and you're helping do that with your new projects and
yeah,
Structure Society, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But you seem really like pro humanity. Like you just you have a care for others, and it just like you just seem like such a nice person. Like you're putting good into the world. And when people talk about AI in various spaces,
yeah,
it could get really, really intense, right? Like it could get
yeah,
extremely dire. And of course, like, yeah, in certain aspects, it can be pretty dire.
yeah,
Um, but what's your opinion about AI in general in the creative spaces? Is it something that we can use for our advantage? Is it the end of
yeah.
creativity altogether? What's your take on it, just in general? I know that's a terrible broad question, but overbroad, objection overbroad.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Well, I also, I know I hear the trains here. Being in the design world and being in the sport and outdoor industry, which I'm not really working in anymore, aside from working with people, a lot of people have lost their jobs even before COVID hit. And so AI is just compounding it. The big brands are not bringing in younger designers. There's all kinds of people coming out of school, not able to find work. So it is impacting people. But a lot of times, and I keep up on it a lot, I listen to a thing called the AI Daily Brief, the podcast with Nathaniel Whittemore every day. It's very technical in some ways, but he talks really down to earth about it. And I've done a few interviews with people who could talk about this is what AI really is, and everybody's overblowing it. But what it is it's having an impact on companies deciding not so much that AI is going to replace people, but that they're taking their money that they were putting on people and they're putting it into researching AI. So the money is getting siphoned away and people are not getting hired. I have conversations daily with everybody from every industry. People are not getting hired. And it's a problem, and that reckoning is going to happen. But for me with AI and creativity, last year, well, about a year and a half ago, I have a friend who is a creative director, and she went right into AI. She's like, okay, when the .com hit, I was working for an agency that was not going to go into e-commerce, and I never learned about it. They didn't do it. They missed the boat, and I really missed a piece. So when the AI thing came up, she said, I am going to learn about this so I'm not left behind again. So she dove right in, and she was during a break between projects, she was learning AI, and she had a colleague there who knew about it that was hanging out near her. And she came out after several days of working intensely on stuff. And she goes, I hate this. I hate AI. Like I hate artificial intelligence, like artwork and all the creative work. Like it's just ugly, blah, blah, blah. She had nothing good to say about it. And he just said to her, he said, why are you having AI do the parts of the job that you love? Why aren't you having the AI do the things you hate doing? like write statements of work, like write, do your financial stuff, do your planning, do all the technical like support work, and she went, oh, and she started to teach herself about how to build AI assistants to help her do all the stuff she didn't like doing that took all her time. She turned around and taught that to me. She built me an AI, like a strategic kind of thought partner. And then I started learning how to build my own GPTs. And I have a few that help me organize my work. And it actually made my work go a lot faster. And it became a thought partner that I could bounce things off of. But I had to come in it with the martial arts piece too, which is I cannot look at anything this GPT, this chat is saying to me as authority. I have to question all of it. And this is where you don't give up your power. AI is not pulling from all the collective knowledge out in the world. And this is, I listened to Rick Beato talk about this online. Ted Gioia on Substack writes heavily about that. And Rick and Ted have had a couple of interviews. And even Rick was saying like, well, there's all these experiences and interviews and things that aren't even on the web, that aren't even documented. And I was saying, well, there's all kinds of work from Gen X and older, videos and portfolios and sketches and all kinds of stuff sitting in people's closets and studios that nobody ever sees. And AI is not pulling from that. And so more and more people have talked about that. So when you have that sense that you're not pulling from the collective knowledge of the world, because you can only get that through story with interacting with people and the subtle nuances, so there's that piece. But then what I started to do when I was working on that what I started to do to help myself was I started running an AI mind meld every Friday for about 6 months, where I just had people pay $5 to kind of come in and like go, all right, I'm going to learn as much as I can to share what let's just share. And I had about a dozen people in and out, regularly, maybe 40 people at over time to come through, and learned a ton. And all the stuff that we did, that was just last year, is already obsolete. Most of it, like it is built on itself so quickly. But through that mind meld, I was talking about the self community world thing. And I said, oh my God, I had an epiphany that when you think about that self in the center, that's the artist. And then that community, that middle layer, that gatekeeper, that's what people are, that's AI. And people are really worried that the companies are going to use AI to squeeze out the artist, right? Use it to create all your art, your marketing, your creative work, visuals, music. I've worked on Suno and tried, things there. And so that idea that gatekeeper layer is going to squeeze the artist out, right? And then they're going to create everything. They're going to take all the money. You don't need people anymore. We can get all of it just in through that. And that's the fear that the artist has. Now, what I looked at it was, well, the artist needs to look at the fact that gatekeeper, that community there is, they can squeeze the gatekeeper out. You can use AI to create all kinds of tools to reach your community without the gatekeeper. You can use Patreon. You can use YouTube. You can use these other platforms. You can create your own to squeeze that one out. So my talk was about having the artist in that center move outward and get their own music out. And now there are more platforms coming up, being built. What was there's one, not Disrupt, what it might be called Disrupt. There's a new platform for musicians that is taking off, where Bandcamp got bought up. And it is a platform that there's probably like 25,000 musicians on there now, where you can go and it's collectively owned by every musician on there and can never be sold to a larger entity. So that you're squeezing out the business piece and you're actually getting the music and the art and the creativity to the fans. Wow. So AI can help artists do that. But as much as if we sit there and go, I hate AI, never going to do anything, we're going to get left behind and we're going to let ourselves get squeezed.
Yeah.
So it's a huge danger, because companies are only hiring people now too that have some AI, in my world, that have AI experience. So it's a tool. It's a tool. It's not a monster. It's a tool. It's only a monster if you let it be.
And that knowledge is power. And it seems like you really equipped yourself to learn some things. So I thank you for the recommendations. People can look those things up and do research of their own as well. And I want to talk about, because we're coming up on time. Thank you so much. I know we might run a little bit over. I want to talk about Structure Society. You put something together. You were doing conferences, in-person conferences is really how it started, right? Can you,
Yes.
so why did you decide to do in-person conferences? That seems like a lot of work to me. I commend anybody who does that, because like it's just like I wish I could just like snap my fingers and make that happen. But you actually did that, and yeah, I commend you for just that alone is awesome. So tell us a little bit about that, and then what then eventually now turned into what you launched this week.
Yes. Thank you for saying that, because it validates the difficulty that
I
it was.
don't know how
It's
you
very
did it. Yeah,
difficult.
I
Yeah,
commend you.
and it was in 2014, so it's 12 years ago. But I was leaving the North Face, and I was a new mom. Well, my son was about 2 at that point, and I was so my husband had said, like, he heard me talk how distraught I was at how creatives were treated, how we had bad bosses basically who didn't understand how to deal with creatives. And so he said, well, don't you have a place where you guys can go and connect? Because he was in more of the web and user experience, and he would go to conferences all the time. But for designers, like I was looking at us designers in the sport and outdoor industry, and we were changing how people were dressing. You know, like Nike, North Face, any of these performance designers were getting really, really popular. My category was over $1 billion in sales already, and it was making a huge impact. So I was looking at that and going, we don't have any place for support, and everybody's feeling really isolated. And he said, well, I know a friend who runs big web conferences. Let's get some coaching. So we got some coaching on how to run a conference. And the biggest piece of advice was create the event you want to go to. Just the same type of thing. What do you want? What is you? So we created Structure Event, which was a 2-day conference in Portland. And we ran it in Portland, but we were living in Oakland. And we brought not the speakers that all the companies would bring to come and talk to their teams. We brought the people we wanted to see, you know, and we cross-pollinated. I brought in people that you never would think that people would want to hear from, writers and other people from other industries. And all I think we had 110 people show up in the first year, word of mouth. And by the time of the fourth year, we had 300 and some people, and it got bigger than I could really handle there. But then it got a bigger, it was less intimate. So running the conferences was a way for people to come together, and it was like therapy. Like, oh my God, everyone's going through this. I didn't realize it was connection, it was conversation, because everyone was isolated in all these different places, freelance by themselves in their homes, in their companies. They were not pulled together. So that was great. But then, yes, I think a couple of our sponsors pulled out during the last time the Trump administration came in, and they pulled out, and it was like, oh, business is changing instantly. And that was the beginning of the decline of our industry too. So we shut it down, and I actually wanted to shut the whole thing down. I closed it up, and people were following me and going, what are you doing next? When's the next thing? Blah, 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 blah. And I just was holding it off. And then COVID happened. And the first year into COVID, I had people calling me saying, we need a place to gather. How are we going to gather? And that's when I met Karen Dunn, who runs NAM. And she was figuring out ways to do things online. And she said, well, I'd love to help you. And I started to do some series online, little webinars. And then I started to do more podcasting. We have a small podcast. And that's when it started to go online, because my community is global, you know, for all of our communities, everybody's global. So how do you find everybody? And over the last few years, I've been trying different things to figure out, what do I want? Because the thing about the conference was it drained me. And that's when I realized I was dealing with the community and I was putting it out into the world, but I wasn't dealing with me. I wasn't dealing with myself and what I really wanted and what was going to feed me. And so instead of feeling drained, I had to create something that was going to feed me. And that took several years to figure out and try, see what sticks, right? And I realized I love podcasting. I love live communities. I love conversations like this. I love them. I never get tired of them. I love them. Even if they're in person online, it doesn't matter to me. I like to connect with people. And I wanted to be able to share my thoughts and my feel like and my experiences. And so I had to figure out what all those were. So I started a Substack. So I write on Substack. I have a blog. I'm writing a book. I'm working on courses within the community, but now I've launched a professional community that is a paid community. And this is a little trickier because it's not a cheap community. It's a bar to entry, but it's not hugely expensive. It's cheaper than going to a martial arts studio, but it still is a place where I needed to create something that could support me and support the work that I was doing, because I have a lot of followers who've been following me for over a decade. And they said the same thing, like, we need structure to exist, but if you are not supported and you can't do it, we can't have it. So it's been up to me to figure out how can I create a community that can interact and find each other in a way that is valuable, that people can input some money or some energy, time, anything, and get something back, and that can support me and the team that I would like to build and grow the community there. So I was doing a lot of talks at trade shows for a while, and that was a place where a lot of money was going out the door. And now that the community is there, I can go back to doing that so that there's more of a flow. And then I'm also building out talks for companies to do more larger talks,
Yeah.
talking with people. This kind of thing is always what will always happen, and it's always volunteer time.
I could
But
definitely see the value of you going to different corporations and
yeah,
talking about supporting their creatives.
they need it though. Companies need it.
Yeah,
And I'm not the only one who could do it. I have a network of coaches and people coming in, and
amazing.
that's why I want to connect with networks like yours so that everyone can find resources and find the people that they need.
Well, thank you so much for creating that space for people. Like that corporate world, like yeah, the creative versus corporate, it's kind of like a versus thing sometimes it feels like, and you're kind of like validating that. It's like and
It's
with
hard.
music, the entertainment industry, the lines are blurred sometimes with the corporations and like
Yeah.
and so it's really cool to hear that, and congratulations on launching that. And we talked before the recording that we were going to talk about this because I think it's a really good opportunity to talk about something we don't usually publicly talk about really in recorded sessions, which is free content versus paid content,
Yeah.
and creating communities that offer free content and also offer paid content. This is a
Yeah.
topic that it's too bad Todd Wolf isn't in the back making faces because as an attorney, and some of you may know, I also litigated a civil lawsuit on my own behalf, so I'm not a lawyer. Um, but but there is a certain ethical obligation, in my personal opinion, when I kind of landed with this musicians peer support community of like I don't know, it's like this isn't my main job, I want to be supported, and then myself as a trauma survivor, I suffer from PTSD, there's also this kind of like over giving kind of a
Yes.
trauma response of like trying to please everybody, so like kind of what you were saying before, it's like you kind of want it to pour into me also. So we
Yeah.
have our Patreon for paid stuff, but we offer a lot of stuff for free.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to ask you about that because you seem
Uh,
extremely ethical and just like really, really pro creative, pro community. Like I really don't get the sense that you're scamming people. And,
yeah.
so it's like, what's kind of your like ethics on that? Like, how did you decide? Like, what's your kind of value system when it comes to that? Because you want, for me, the way I see it is, if somebody's going to pay for something, I want them to get at the very least the value of that. More
Right.
likely, what I really want is like they're getting exponential value out of that. It's almost just like that feels like a
Yeah.
gesture because they're getting so much out of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
how do you feel about paid
Oh,
content versus free content?
You're talking about something that's very similar to everything here, where like in martial arts, it's like, well, but I'm a peaceful person. Why do I want to learn how to fight? Right? Like, well, yes, because you have to be a peaceful person. So you have the ethical thing behind having these skills and these tools. Money is an energy, and everything is an energy exchange, and money is one of the hardest things to deal with people around, because it's all charged. So we each one of us has to think about, what am I attaching to money, right? And ultimately, what do I want? And we all really just want to be supported. So there's this feeling of, well, the energy exchange for the value. I am somebody that overgives, and that's why I had to pull back too, because I tend to overgive and not ask for enough and not take care of myself first. And you can't survive, and that's a very female thing to do. And people will let it happen. They'll take advantage of it. You have to take that responsibility for yourself. Now, on the other hand, being a content creator and a thought leader and working on your own thing and putting it out there, especially on LinkedIn, you can see all kinds of people calling themselves coaches. Um, and I've dug into lots of them, and people are making millions of dollars. They're making so much money, and a lot of them are preying off of older people, rich people, poor people. It doesn't matter. They're finding what they do, the funnel. Like, I'm doing the funnel. I'm into it's kind of like the pyramid scheme idea, that they get so focused on what they have to do to create their offering. And so that like $3,000 to $5,000 offering is a shtick, is a thing. Create that thing to get people into you. Here's your funnel, get them funneled down in here. So I'm a bit anti-funnel of like, yeah, no, that's just not going to be me. And what I also did was I started using a bit of the chats, different chats, to cross-check some of these people's credentials. So when you hear about them, you can go figure out who is more legit and who's not. And there's several people there are many, many people out there who can do legit work, but they don't have the credentials. They're just self-proclaimed. So this is a martial arts thing too, is you have lots of people who can proclaim themselves, they can buy a black belt, they can open up a school. They don't even have to have any lineage. In Asia, it's never about what you know, it's about who's your teacher. They always want to know who's your lineage, who'd you learn from, because that said everything about your reputation. In the West, that's blown out of the water. And so it's really easy to get scammed. So asking questions, knowing, getting referrals from people that you know. If you want to do something, if you ever heard this person, go scope them out and ask, chat all kinds of questions. Does this person look legit? You can find out all these different links. I have found so many AI personalities on LinkedIn and who are now selling tons of books on Amazon, and they're not even a real personality. There's so much scam out there. It's pretty scary, but you start to develop an eye. And if you do study more AI stuff, you start to be able to see it. So that's another reason why to know a little bit about it. But there's a trust in your gut. So when you go and you do your own internal identity work, you start to trust yourself a lot more. But it's also, yeah, I get emails every day about people who want me to hire them to do stuff. And none of them have a logo, a website, any kind of cross-check customers they've worked for. I mean, it goes right in the trash. And one of the reasons I put on LinkedIn, Michelle M. Rose, is that I can see when it's an automatic email, because it'll say, hi, Michelle M. And that's my little, I figured that out a long time ago. So little tricks to kind of see who's actually talking to me and who are you and why are you
Yeah.
talking to me.
Do
But
you curate your community? Like when people want to join,
oh yeah.
they can't just like be a member, just like randomly sign up on the website. Like this is mainly for the creative community, and so you vet your members.
Yeah, and that's also one of the things about having paid content. The free content is, it's you have to kind of see free content as, kind of a gift and marketing to people.
Yeah,
Here's proof of who I am,
right.
and it's something that you can have. But then I set my rates for my community. It's already a barrier. It's And that's what a lot of people will do too, so that it's a barrier for that. Yes, you can be scammed by people having too high of this and they can't really deliver. How can you tell one-on-one? But with a community, people aren't going to just sign right up and start paying and then show up. And I have all, they have to, they're vetted by me. And they're coming in and I'm creating a safe space. That was the biggest thing about structure. What people loved about the conference was when I did the brand work with a colleague who did all kinds of interviews, everyone came back and said it was a safe space to speak up about things they couldn't talk about in their companies, online. And so I protect that just voraciously, like, and so people, I was like, well, do I want to do an application? People have to kind of type up about who they are. They have to do an identity piece. And yeah, they're vetted through the fact that they have to show up just like this and see their faces. They can't just
Yeah.
come in and start wandering around
Right.
and doing stuff.
Yeah.
There's a few gates in there.
Yeah.
And so, but I have plenty of free content that
Right.
they can see who I talk to, and there's the
Yeah.
kind of people that are there, and that usually keeps people.
I mean, it's very that's really how this has worked out, and
Yeah,
I'd like to hear that from you because it just seems very organic, where it's just
yeah,
like, our Diamond program in Patreon is our kind of weekly sessions. We have some Diamond members here in the room today, and I mean, it's $39 a month. But they're paying because they know what they're getting. We're meeting every week. It's really hands on.
yeah.
It's like everything you need. Um, and but then we offer everything for free so that we can kind of show people who we are and what we do.
Yeah.
And so I like how you have that approach of, it's not like, oh, we're just going to be exclusive, but like if you are
Yeah.
at that level and you need that support in that type of way, we're here for you.
You
But if
can
you
have
want to just poke around, we have this
Yeah.
for you.
And you can create tiers. And I think what you're doing
Yes.
and what I'm doing are not much different. It's just that Patreon is a great avenue for artists, musicians, and what you're doing. There is a whole world that exists there. For my world, I'm dealing with a lot of people who work in corporate, who
Yes.
are running brands, and they're working at high level and they want a corporate kind of experience. And so
Yes.
having, and my founding membership right now is $79 a month. It'll be 99 once I hit a certain number.
Yeah.
And that's still, it was like within the Circle community, that Circle platform that I use, that was, you have your kind of your hobby communities, and then you have your professional, and they can go up, some
Yeah.
are thousands of dollars.
And you're talking about like the people that are the designers in the name brands that because you're kind of like leading edge. Like I'm a fan of the Las Vegas Aces. You probably remember
Yep, yep.
women's basketball team,
Woohoo.
and fashion is such a huge part of it. Asia Wilson, she's the #1 player in the world. She has her own sneakers, multiple sneakers, A1s, A2s, and it's just really, really cool to see the female athletes in the design space, and then also
Yeah.
Paige Becker's on a Coach commercial and stuff like that. And like for people that are leading the way in your industry to
Yeah.
have a space much like Musicians Peer Support for the independent artist and for the
Yeah.
creative space and the musicians, that's really, really important for us as musicians because there is this kind of crossover. Flau'jae Johnson, for example, she was a rookie and she's a basketball player, WNBA, but she's also a rapper. She's an artist, and so
Absolutely.
we need
These are
people like you
culture.
leading us because that's how things are today is there's so much more opportunity for young people, women, to be multi-layered, multi-dimensional when
Yeah.
it comes to the crossover between the intersection of these cultures of sports and
Yeah.
music and all of that.
It's a culture creation. That's what, basically what you're saying too, is like all of these cultures collide. And there's a lot of new magazines coming out. I have a few friends that are starting up new publications. Magazines are culture creators,
Great
and
news.
they're coming into, more of these physical copies of beautiful things you want to keep, which is what us designers love. But that's all sports, music, fashion, more, just, culture, thought, identity. I don't want to say politics, but it's more like current
Yeah.
events,
Yeah,
like
culture,
what's going
thought, and
on.
identity is that really just sounds great to me because part of
Yeah,
it for me is like seeing the ins and outs of the independent art, like the people rolling up the sleeves, like, for you, what your day to day of like literally, pen to paper or cutting some piece of fabric or like, this kind of like rolling up your sleeves, woodshedding, doing the work,
yeah,
but that is creating culture and that we're changing things. We can move society. We can make
absolutely.
movements, create movements, and we don't have to kind of just like accept things as they are. Maybe we can only control certain things, as according to my therapist, but there is change that we
Right.
can forge when you have safe spaces like that cross cultures.
And artists are doing it through their work, and
Right.
so much of it, like that is the era that I grew up in this, especially in the 80s and then the 90s again, of like really speaking through the art. That's coming through again. The younger kids are doing it. We're doing it. There's more. So if you go out and you can find it, it is there on the social platforms. You got to sift through the noise and find the little tricks to get to it. But these kinds of communities are where you're going to find it. That's one of the things I want to do, is find a way to have all the inspirational stuff I'm hearing about in one place. I don't have enough time to create like my own little zine of it, in my newsletter. But there's a lot of grassroots stuff coming up on
Amazing.
in the music and the fashion and the cultural side. And so I
Great.
have a lot of hope. And so that's why I show up for things like this.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
every individual conversation, one person shows up, you talk without, as we say in martial arts, like the teacher always shows up. One student shows up, you teach that student. Many students, you teach them. You don't worry about the ones who don't show up. If no one shows up, you show up for yourself and you train,
Mm.
you do that.
Yeah, the value of showing up. We talked about that before everybody came in, and sometimes it's really hard. Like
Yeah.
it's not. It's sometimes it's just like we don't really even feel like we're showing up. And so I want to thank you for showing up for us. I just want to ask. Well, I didn't do my speed questions. We're so late on time already. It's okay. Maybe you can come back and talk to us again.
Absolutely.
Um,
Anytime. Love
I
it.
don't know. It's like maybe just like a couple really quick questions, like just really speed. Like, do you have like a recommended new color for us to look up? Like, is there a color that we may not know about that you might recommend?
A color
Yeah,
that you may not know about?
yeah.
Well, there's always a Pantone color of the year. I don't know
Mm.
what it is this year off the top of my head because you're catching me off guard, but you could
Yes,
go,
I remember hearing about that. I will look
you
that
could look
up.
it up right now and say Pantone color of the year 2026,
Right,
2027 might have been announced
right.
already.
Okay,
My
cool.
recommendation is stay away from it.
Ooh,
So
good
you might look at it and
recommendation.
go like, oh, because there's a thing with trend as well that there's this, if you, meaning find your own version. If you like it, go for it. If you don't follow it. Because there's a lot of companies that pay for these trend services and just follow them verbatim. And
Yeah,
that's why the whole world starts to, it's less of a prediction and more of a, we just told you what all to do, right? Like chicken and egg, right?
yeah,
If you like it, use it. If you don't, ignore it.
yeah.
And know, but all those colors of the year are kind of pointing to where things are going.
Mm.
Um,
Mary Beth says it's cloud. I did remember seeing that.
okay,
It's
yes,
cloud. That's right.
it's cloud. That's off white.
Yeah,
Yes, it's
and I learned from Sean Barron when we showcased to him. He said, yeah, somebody asked, "Do you write to the trend?" And he said, "No, because if you're writing to the trend, you're too late." Um,
exactly,
and then
exactly.
and then the question is, how do you write 4 to 7 years in advance? And the my answer is be inspired. The answer is within you, I think. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely. If you are your own, if you are working from your own identity and you're your own thing, you're creating your own trend, and you're always going to be on trend for yourself. And sometimes your trend might line up with the world. And that's kind of where you get this synergy of people kind of blowing up. And it's a dangerous place for people. They have to really manage what happens to them afterwards. But create your own content, create your own trend, be yourself, because no one else can be you ever. even if they try to copy you. So don't try. Oh, wait, somebody, my partner looked this up. It was like, um, don't follow somebody else's path. Like if you're following somebody else's path, again, I don't even have it said right. It's already taken, right? Like the identity
Yeah.
is like, don't be somebody else. That identity is already taken. You just have to
Yes.
be yourself because you can't be anything else other than yourself. But we try to be other things. We try to be
Yeah.
anything but ourselves.
Right. And you're really answering kind of my wrap-up question that I usually ask. You have so much wisdom, but I'll still do the traditional last question that I have. And thank you so much, everybody. Please give it up for Michelle Rose. Thank you. We're going to give you one last round of applause later, but just, a few last words if you have. Our community, as you know, is made up of all kinds of people from all different creative spaces. We have people who are just starting out, but we also have legends in the business, veterans in the business. So any kind of last thoughts, last words, or any words of wisdom for the greater good of the group, greater good of the world?
Yeah. Um, Show up. You're needed. You're needed, all levels. And just entering in, being around for a long time, your words have value. People need them and say them, and somebody needs to hear them. So a lot of times we think, oh, I don't have anything to add, or nobody's going to miss me today, and there's sometimes you can't be there. But every time we show up, we usually never regret it. So show up for yourself so you can show up for others.
Love it. Thank you so much. Everybody give it up one more time for Michelle Rose. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being here. Musicians Peer Support really loves you. And thank you, everybody. Please visit structuresociety.com. IG also STRUKTUR Society.
Scandinavian spelling.
Okay, wonderful. And that I spelt it out just because also we do have people listening like a podcast, so just in case.
Right.
So Michelle Rose is the name, everybody. Please go follow her. And also, Michelle, can you say just like literally 5 minutes for happy hour before after we wrap up the recording? Thank you so much. Everybody watching the recording, thank you so much for watching. And please comment below and give Michelle a little shout out. Let us know that you've watched this. And please visit us at musicianspeersupport.com. Email me at mps@musicianspeersupport.com if you have any questions or if you want to find out about our Patreon. But most importantly, go support Michelle and Structure Society. And let's continue this relationship, Michelle, because I have many more questions about fashion, design, clothes design. Maybe musicians want to design their own clothes. Maybe they have some ideas. How can they connect with some people? There's many conversations can be had. So I would love to have you back.
Yep. Debbie Harry designed all her own outfits for Blondie.
Ooh, good to know.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. This will conclude our recording, but everybody in the room, don't go away. Thank you so much, everyone.